Hi again, welcome back to my channel. This is Juliet here. I thought I'd make this video in front of the fire because it's nice and cosy. This video is a review of As a God Might Be by Neil Griffiths. But before I do the review, I just wanted to say thanks to... I've had quite a lot of new subscribers since the beginning of December. Don't get me wrong, I've still got under 100 subscribers, but it's lovely when people subscribe to the channel, particularly people that I don't think I know anyway. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to Mafumi, Alderbooks, Eleanor, Little Old Lady, Charles, Happy Occurrence, Dutch Girl, Jenny, Horseshoe, Susan, Jane and Leah for subscribing to my channel. I really do appreciate it. It's nice to know that I'm not making these videos into a void or an abyss, that people are actually wanting to hear what I say about the books that I read. So thank you. But as I said, today's video is about a novel I recently read by a booktuber called Neil Griffiths, called As a God Might Be. I'll put a link to his channel down below. So As a God Might Be. This was a book that was recommended to me, well, it wasn't recommended to me. I saw a review of it on Kate Armstrong's channel, who wrote the incredible book, The Storyteller, which I have read. And she really, really rated this book. And I generally like both her writing and the books that she reads. So I thought I must give this literary fiction novel a go. And I am really glad I did. And now my dog Fred is in the way. You're going to settle down somewhere? Oh, well, I can hear my other dog outside barking. So I will be back in a minute. This is Archie. It looks like we're doing a big review with the dogs. Lay down then, it's okay. Archie is so super old. Once he sits down somewhere, he doesn't get up again. Oh, I'm having to move my legs around his legs. So what's it about? It's about a man called Mac, who is 44, who begins to have sort of visions or feels he's being approached by God. And the novel opens with really no introductions. We're just introduced through Mac with the opening line of, he built a house next to a church. And that's the opening line of the novel. And so we don't get any kind of introduction as to what he's doing there. We know what he's doing is something unusual and that he's never built anything before. The opening few chapters basically focus on the plot of land where he is marking out this church and house, although he doesn't really know what they're going to look like. And the fact that people just seem to turn up and help him without him asking or requesting for help. They just turn up. And he's left with this sort of crew of 4 young people who are all under 25, sort of between 18 and 25, who become quite central characters in the novel. And they are Rich, Nathaniel, Terry and Rebecca. And they're all in their own way lost. So these 4 young people are looking at you feel that they're looking for something or someone to believe in a world which Mac describes as a post-religious country. We now live in a post-religious country. So we're introduced to Mac through the work that he's doing, building this house and this church. And he doesn't even know what he's building them for or what the purpose of them is. And the project sort of begins to take on this life of its own. You then go, after a few chapters, you then go back to 2 months earlier to Mac's life in London, where he lives with his partner Holly. They're not married. He makes a point of saying that a few times in the novel. I think the sense is there that they're together because they love each other, not because they have to be together. And he has 6-year-old twins called Pearl and Walter. Walter has autism. So we go back 2 months to a dinner party, which kind of, I don't know, sums up Mac's life, or the life he comes from. He comes from quite a privileged upper middle class set in London. So in this dinner party he kind of describes the fact that he wants to go off and build this church and this house, and His friends all find it quite funny and quite interesting. Even though Holly herself is quite distressed by this whole thing, I think they all kind of believe he's going through a midlife crisis of some sort, which in part is potentially related to his job. He has quite a high pressure job where he basically predicts the future of behaviour of people after a significant event has happened. He's a bit like a kind of a social scientist or social researcher, so he interviews people and then he provides reports to governments or agencies or whatever on what the likely behaviours of people will be over certain events. And it becomes clear as the novel goes on that he's been involved in a particularly secret government project where he's been asked to predict the behaviour of people if a dirty bomb was released in London. He even invents a new term called atrociology. So the study of atrocity, or the behaviour of people in an atrocity. So everyone around him has their kind of feelings or opinions as to why he has suddenly driven off, sold part of his business, driven off to build this church in the house. And actually, in a sense, the novel doesn't try and answer that question. That's the point. I guess what Neil Griffith is saying is, depending on the historical time and context that we're in, will depend on how you label experiences and actions such as Max. So 200 years ago, he would have been potentially labelled a prophet or someone divine, but in our world, it must be a mental breakdown, because that's how we view behaviours such as his, which seem quite odd to us. So in doing the research to write to do a video for this review, I had a look at Neil Griffiths' previous videos, and I came across one where he tries to explore why he writes. He talks about writing as an act of faith, because there is no solid foundations. He talks about the beginnings of a book, or the first 30,000 words of a book, of being a bit like building a pier over a cliff edge. And how until you've written it out, until you've written those first 30,000 words, there is no structure and foundation to support it. And I really think in this novel, this building of the church explores this creative process in a very similar way. Rather than figuratively, the pier over the cliff, it's literally, we have a man building a church and a house on a cliff top. And a number of times he stops him and feels himself ridiculous and wonders why he's doing it. And I think that's Neil Griffiths' way of looking at anything that we do is creative, is that it's all an act of faith. It's a huge act of faith. And this is what Mac is doing. Mac doesn't know what the purpose of his church and his house is, but he seems to have the ability to allow himself just to go through the process and not worry about that. Though, as I said, he's pulled up short quite a lot by Holly, his wife, who really makes him question what he's doing. And she's very angry at him, and she sees this as the end of their marriage. And I really do empathise with Holly. And this brings me to one of my, it's not a criticism as much, but one of the things that I really was thinking about as I was reading this novel is, could the main character have been a female, been a woman who was a partner and a mother of 6-year-olds? And I think it's interesting the way that Mac's behaviour was viewed by his friends, in particular Marvin and Simon, who come out to visit him, and basically they come out to see the church and the house, and instead of bringing him home to Holly, they encourage him. They actually come up with ideas for the church. But the point I was making was, I think if it was been a woman that had done this, I don't think her friends and her family would have been as understanding as they were of Mac. And it's nothing to do with Neil Griffiths' writing or anything to do with what Neil's written. It just made me realise how we seem to view men going off to do something creative and seemingly bizarre, and we kind of accept that and allow them that, we indulge them in that. But if it were Holly, Mac's wife, that went off and left her 6-year-old children to build a house or a church, you get the sense that there'd be more people trying to pull her back and more people making her feel guilty for what she was doing. No one really made Mac feel guilty for what he's doing. He seemed to be allowed to express himself in that way. Mac himself was obviously very intriguing. You see he was torn between family and this mission, and then you get the sense that these young people, Rich, Nathaniel, Terry and Rebecca also become partly his family as well, and he feels a responsibility to them almost to not let them down. And Holly becomes very jealous of this other family, and I guess I'm always searching in novels for the purpose of life, the answer of life, and I guess I'm always wanting novels to tell me that there is more to life than just a species that have got so intelligent they have self-awareness. I guess I want to believe there's more to it than that, there's more to the universe than that. So maybe I'm someone that is seeking religious experiences, seeking a deeper meaning. And Matt talks about the Old Testament being very much about power, the idea of having power, and that then God realised that power, we were using power without love, and the purpose of Jesus in the New Testament was to actually show us that love was the answer and not power, and that Jesus' death is an example of us not necessarily putting love before power. Okay, so I think the best way to describe what Mac feels he gets from his visitations with God is just to read a little bit of it. So this is just over halfway in the novel when he's been visited by a particularly physical visitation, and where he ends up at the bottom of a cliff, and he's recovering from this accident, and he says it's simple. God is complete in himself, uncreated, self-sustaining, without need, and yet we have the universe, which was an act of pure giving and unnecessary to him. First, we must accept this. We are unnecessary to him, and yet he still created us, and in doing so, he reduced himself. For an act of creation to be a pure gift, it must come with complete freedom. But to allow complete freedom beyond himself is necessary a reduction of his completeness. In that first act, God created creation. What was brought into being first was creation. If you want to go to scripture, that is what he means by created in his image. Like him, we are capable of creation, gratuitous creation, which is the free giving of ourselves or the unnecessary giving of ourselves, the act we have chosen to call love. We might only have a tiny capacity in comparison, but we have it. And of course, we also have the freedom to use it or not, as he did. We are like him in that way too. And yet there is a problem. Of course there is. We haven't chosen to do as he did. We chose the opposite. Instead of love, we chose power, that other residuum of him that abides in us. Maybe the first act was not possible, if we can use such a term, without some of his power finding its way into us. And so in the same way we carry with us a small parcel of love, we also carry a small parcel of power. But whereas love cannot be degraded or it ceases to be love, corrupted power is still power. I know all this sounds simple-minded, but we share two elements with him, love and power. Power is ascendant, of course it is. It requires nothing of us. It is a self-animating force. Certainly we don't need to search ourselves for it, nor do we need to seek it elsewhere. Love is different. It requires our attention, and when it does receive our attention, it gathers up and brings together, it binds and holds. Of all the things I've said that he made clear, this is the easiest to believe, I think. If we look at our behaviour, who amongst us believes we possess a surfeit of love? We yearn to love, but it's still a struggle. To be generous and patient, to be forgiving. And never more so when we need to offer it freely to those who don't care for it or don't like. So I guess this novel is trying to tell us, or trying to remind us what the point of a God is, as a God might be. You know, a God that has freely created us through love in his image. Surely, therefore, we should be able to understand that that's what we need to give back, is love. And when we get 2/3 into the novel, these ideas are then tested. Something absolutely horrendous and terrible happens, and that's where Mac has to do more than just talk about what God is and what God gives him. He has to act out that knowledge. And I guess you get the sense at the end of the novel that what Mac has been through doesn't need a label or a name. We don't need to diagnose him or treat him. I think, you know, the message is about the fact that there's still mystery out there in this world, and that not everything should be or could be explained, and there's so much about ourselves and our that we don't understand, that I still think there's much to discover. So I think in that sense this novel says there is so much more out there. I'm just checking my notes to see if I've missed anything. I'm not sure how clear this review is. I'm not even sure if it's a review really, just to say that I felt the characters were believable, that it was more than just a message novel. Sometimes you can get a novel that is so busy giving you a message that the characters are two-dimensional, and I would say they're not. I really disliked Mac a lot because he was dumping his family in it, chasing his dream, but I also admired Mac a lot for not letting his family get in the way of his dream. So an extremely timely novel. I think it's timely because I think the world is generally in flux around what people believe, around the ideas that there are so many atrocities taking place in this world. In our own country, we're a very divided country around Brexit. People are going very right or very left. There doesn't seem to be a lot of love around. There doesn't seem to be a lot of understanding around. There's a lot of inflammatory talk, a lot of discriminatory talk about people from other nations. And so this novel is a very reflective and timely piece of writing, reminding us that we're all human beings and that we all have the capacity to show love and understanding to each other. It's just that sometimes it appears we are choosing power over love. I'm going to stop there, and I'm probably going to have to edit this video quite a lot because I kind of have rambled on, but I highly recommend you to read this novel. Fantastic Christmas present for all those people in your family that really want to think about things. Anyone who's read Dostoevsky, I think, would enjoy this novel. Right, I need to go now because I'm being licked to death as well. Bye bye. We're kissing instead. Bye. Bye bye. Archie, you're going to say goodbye. Archie's just going to sleep on my leg. Bye bye, everybody. Bye bye. Thanks ever so much for watching if you got this far. I'll see you again, might be before Christmas, but potentially after Christmas now. Hopefully with some more book reviews. Bye bye.